We often don't question why we become attached to people, objects, beliefs, money, and success. It just happens so naturally that we accept it as a normal part of life. From childhood, we are trained to hold on to our toys, to our friends, to our parents, and later, to careers, possessions, relationships, and ambitions. We are told that attachment is love, that wanting more is ambition, and that having more makes us somebody in the world. But we never ask what lies behind this craving to hold, to possess, to cling. The deeper truth is that attachment grows out of fear of loneliness, fear of not being enough, fear of failure, fear of being nothing. And from this fear, the mind creates illusions of security in people and things. We don't actually love, we depend. We don't truly enjoy success. We fear the lack of it. This attachment then becomes a prison, quietly dulling our sensitivity, stealing our natural intelligence, and turning our lives into a constant chase for more, for better, for permanent satisfaction, which never comes. Take a simple example. A man buys a new phone. At first, it's just a tool, but soon, it becomes a symbol of his worth. He checks it constantly, compares it with others, upgrades it not out of need, but out of insecurity. If it breaks or gets stolen, he feels lost, angry, incomplete. The phone was never the problem. The problem lies in the mental image he created around it. That image, of status, pride, identity, becomes more important than the object itself. This is how attachment works. We don't hold the thing holds us. We think we own it, but actually, it owns our peace of mind. And when our identity becomes tied to objects, people, and ideas, we lose the capacity to observe life as it is. We lose the freedom to respond freshly, intelligently, and honestly. It's the same with relationships. We fall in love, we form friendships, we marry, and then we become attached. We confuse love with possession. We begin to demand, expect, control. We are afraid of losing the other person because we feel empty without them. So we create rules, make sacrifices, suppress our real emotions, all in the name of keeping the relationship. But where there is fear, can there be love? If your happiness depends on someone else, then you are not free, and neither are they. Imagine a woman who feels unloved within. She meets someone who gives her attention, and she clings to them. Now, her joy is dependent on their behavior. If they look at someone else, she feels jealous. If they leave, she feels broken. This emotional dependence is often mistaken for deep love, but in reality, it is a form of inner poverty. She doesn't love from fullness, but from lack. And wherever there is lack, the mind becomes afraid, reactive, and closed. It cannot understand. It can only cling or resist. Attachment to success also leads to a mediocre mindset. One might think that striving for success is the opposite of mediocrity, but it is not. Mediocrity is not about failure. It is about imitation. When you follow the crowd, copy trends, and do what everyone else is doing just to make it, you are not truly living. You are only repeating patterns. Real intelligence flowers when the mind is free from fear, when it is not trying to become something, but is curious, open, and deeply observant. A student who studies only for marks is not really learning. A professional who works only for promotions is not truly creative. A spiritual seeker who follows blindly is not truly aware. When the ego, becomes central, all actions become narrow. The mind becomes obsessed with gain, loss, praise, blame. It cannot see beyond itself. And this self-centered activity is the root of mediocrity. Look at the world today. Most people live in patterns. They wake up, work, chase goals, compare, fear, please, repeat. This cycle continues day after day. Even in relationships, the same drama repeats. Even in success, there is no real satisfaction. Why? Because the root cause is ignored. The mind, driven by attachment, is always escaping something: loneliness, boredom, insecurity. It is always reaching outwards, never turning inwards. But until we understand ourselves, until we watch our thoughts, our fears, our desires without judgment, we remain prisoners of our own illusions. True freedom is not in having more, but in seeing clearly. When you observe without trying to change, without condemning, you begin to see how the mind creates attachments to protect itself. You begin to see the falseness of the idea that a person, a thing, or an achievement can make you whole. Consider a young man who loses his job. He falls into depression, not because he is starving, but because his identity was tied to his work. He feels like a failure. Society has taught him that he is what he does. So when that role disappears, he feels like nothing. But if he watches himself, if he questions the belief that his worth comes from status, he may see something deeper. He may discover that the fear of being nobody is what drove him to become somebody. And in seeing that, the fear loses power. Then he can act not from fear, but from clarity. Maybe he takes up a simpler job. Maybe he explores something new. But whatever he does, it is no longer out of attachment. It is out of freedom. This kind of freedom does not come from books, teachers, or systems. It comes from watching your own life closely. Why do I cling to this person? Why do I fear being alone? Why do I want more money? Why do I need success? These questions are not to be answered by others. They are to be lived. When you look deeply, you may find that what you thought was love was just fear. What you called ambition was just insecurity. What you saw as intelligence was just memory. And in that seeing, a great silence comes. A silence that is not dull, but alert. A mind that is silent in this way is no longer mediocre. It is fresh, original, and deeply alive. In such a mind, there is no conflict between being and becoming. It is not concerned with image, reputation, or comparison. It acts when needed, rests when tired, speaks when necessary, and listens deeply. It does not attach itself to people or things, yet it can love deeply, care sincerely, and live fully. It has nothing to prove, nothing to protect. That is real intelligence, not the kind that wins debates or builds empires, but the kind that understands life in its wholeness. So the question is not whether we should detach or renounce. The question is whether we are willing to see the truth of our attachments, not to judge them, not to fight them, but to see how they operate in our daily lives. That seeing itself begins to dissolve the grip. When the mind is no longer chasing or clinging, it becomes quiet. And in that quietness, it can see what is real, not through effort, but through insight. And in that real seeing, intelligence flowers, not borrowed intelligence, but your own. An intelligence that is free, fearless, and fully alive.